and welcome to Conversations here on Congregation Emmanuel's Facebook page and our Polar Chapel streaming page. We're excited this week. Every week we talk to someone new in the community regarding what's going on during the pandemic, what they envision, what they think about. And this week we are talking to Elizabeth Santos, who we're lucky enough is a member of our congregation and is a Houston ISD board member. So Elizabeth Santos, welcome to Conversations. How are you today?
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for having me today. I am, like everyone else, just making it and trying to look out for my neighbor here. So that's pretty much it.
Well, again, we appreciate you coming on. I apologize to our guests who are familiar with my co-host, my cat, but she'll be an active participant throughout the show. So Elizabeth, let's get to meet you before we dive into some interview questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us, pretend this is a community that doesn't know who you are. Tell us who you are and a little about yourself.
Well, I'm Elizabeth Santos. I am a graduate of HISD. I've been with HISD since 1986 as a student, then a volunteer, and I was a teacher for 10 years, now a board member. I was brought up in the north side of Houston in a predominantly low SES and highly undocumented neighborhood. And it much like every other teacher, I started out saying, I'm going to go and change the world and teach and, and inspire others to love education as much as I do. Through that, I became a public education advocate. And also I met my now husband, Ryan Penner. He was a teacher at then Jeff Davis, now Northside. I taught in the community where I taught in the high school where I graduated, taught at Sam Houston for 7 years and moved to then Jeff Davis, now Northside, where my mom graduated from high school. And I always just wanted to come back and give back to the community. And that's, again, when I met Ryan, we started advocating for public education. We helped run another school board member's campaign, and that was an experience. But through that, I guess we saw a lot of the way that things should be and they weren't. And then we'll get more into that with the questions that you asked, Jason. But yes, I have been in education. I've loved education my entire life. I was one of those kids that I had the back of my bedroom door I used as a chalkboard, and I lined up all my stuffed animals and my little sister and my little cousins, and I was the teacher, and it was either that or law school. So, I let my time do the law school thing.
Well, education is important in my household. My wife, as you know, has an education background. My mother, a very proud PTO president of my high school, Westbury High School, growing up. But, what's fascinating to me about you, Elizabeth, is that you were a teacher and now you've transitioned to this role of a school board member. What benefit do you have? And I know there's others on the school board who were in similar roles as you. What benefit and what understanding from being on the ground floor do you have to help you with your role as a school board member?
Well, that's actually what prompted me to run for school board, was that I was a teacher and we had all of these policies that were well-intentioned but didn't play out the way that most school board members thought they would. We had over-testing, and every 4 days we were testing, and I was, again, teaching in Title I schools where we lacked resources, we lacked experienced teachers, we lacked experienced principals. So we got a lot of, again, those policies that were in play hurt our kids. Every 4 days we were testing to prepare for the STAR test. We stopped reading Shakespeare, we stopped dissecting frogs. All of that, once the STAR came into our high schools as a kind of a culture of actually killing instruction, and became the driver of what's the word? The driving focus for public education. It really started to hurt us. I'm sorry, excuse me 1 second. My co-host is here and he just wanted to pop in and say hello.
We're hoping we get the co-host, the guest.
Yes. So this is Morris Isai Santos Penner. This is, he will be 6 months old on Friday. And so he just wanted to say hello. And that's my baby right here. Here you go, baby. Thank you.
It's so easy to be distracted when we have loved ones nearby, right?
Right, right.
And there's my cat.
Right. And so going back to your question, Jason, living in an undocumented, highly undocumented neighborhood where parents are afraid to speak up and speak out, where teachers, we were reprimanded if we did speak out against this culture of test prep. We have insight. We have insight as to what really happens when these policies that, you know, these well-intentioned policies don't play out as one would expect. Right now, I am, how can I put this gently? So the technology aspect of things, you know, we cannot replace teachers with technology.
Right.
And although right now during the pandemic, we are using technology, some of us are using technology as we are today to be able to communicate to communities. I've always advocated for the community that isn't in front of the computer, that isn't in front of an iPad, that doesn't have access to computers or internet or is just trying to survive. And you'll get to know that I challenge the status quo so every opportunity that I get, because when we don't challenge the status quo, it's all the people that aren't in front of the computer that are left behind.
Got it. You know, you mentioned in your last answer all the different people, the principals, the school board, the teachers. Let's change focus to the pandemic, which you've kind of talked about to some degree. I'm a logistics person at the synagogue. Everyone knows that. My mind, I'm always curious about how things are functioning behind the scenes. Houston ISD is massive. Lots of schools, lots of personnel, lots of students. You know, the first thing that came to my mind when HISD decided to close is, wow, this is a big operation to transition. So what were the big steps that had to be taken for Houston ISD to eventually shut down in-person learning and start getting the balls rolling for this digital community?
I believe that it's a difference of opinions that was really our ultimate barrier or obstacle. We have a team of 10, and everybody had their own opinions on what we should and shouldn't do. And you know, in 1918, the Spanish influenza hit. We had school districts that were reactive. We had school districts that were proactive. So that was the biggest issue at first. And again, I went and I challenged status quo and said, we must shut down. There are many voices out there that said that they didn't want to shut down because of, you know, it's an unfortunate reality, but of funding. If we don't have money, how are we going to educate our kids? The ability to have digital access. So that spring break, our teachers really didn't get a break. Principals did not get a break. Our kids, our principals, I mean, our teachers right now, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week this week. If I forget to honor our teachers.
Thank you, teachers, yes.
Yes, thank you so much for all that you do. But I mean, we didn't get a break, Jason, and I would have loved a pause and to be able to think of all the communities that we would forget about in the world of technology during this time. So nearly 30,000 employees and over 210,000 students, it was a challenge. And again, my role as a school board member was to focus on those that weren't gonna have what they needed to be educated in a digital environment.
Right, so that kind of leads to my next question. You kind of alluded to the challenges of those educational professionals. I mean, you just said they really didn't have a break because it's like the week before spring break, it's basically started fading out, and then we had the day off, then spring break, then it was business, back to business. We got to get those kids going. I mean, so what were the biggest challenges? What did that 1 week of spring break look like for teachers who typically would be kicking their feet back up, getting ready for the end of the school year?
And uncertainty as to, number one, how we're going to reach every child. Number two, the learning platforms that we were using. We used Clever, we used Microsoft Teams, we're a decentralized district, which means that every school has their own budget, every school can teach what they want to teach and so forth. I mean, as long as they go with the curriculum, it's the TEKS, the Texas Central of Knowledge and Skills. So that was a bit difficult. And right now in the time of the year, at this time of year, we're spiraling. As teachers, we're going back and teaching everything that we've already taught at the beginning of the year until now. We'd be preparing for STAR. So when we were given liberty to actually be creative in instruction, I mean, our teachers just took that challenge and ran with it. But again, just going back, Jason, what was your question again? I'm sorry. I want to make sure I answer your question. We
were talking about the big challenges that they had, and what can break them versus what it's like as they had moving.
You're cutting up a little bit, but I heard challenges. So yeah, the unique set of challenges is that, you know, I have a pretty diverse district. I know just District 1. It encompasses Garden Oaks, Heights, near Northside, the 290 area. And we have parents that were balancing working remotely and trying to homeschool their children. And then I had another challenge where parents are just trying to keep a roof over their kids' heads. And their family unit is really at an existential threat right now, just trying to keep their family together, where some parents have asked their children to go to work so that, because they don't have papers, and they're undocumented. And so their children might have a social security number. That now I have students working at Target, at Kroger, and seeing those things. So the unique set of challenges is balancing what different families need in HISD.
Right, and it's just fascinating because I think everyone's workflow and time is kind of thrown out the door with what we're going through right now. You know, days flow, everything kind of flows. So whether you're the teacher or the student, everything kind of just feels like a mishmash, if you will, to use vernacular, right?
Right.
Yes.
You can't differentiate, like that stopping point, Jason, like there is no stopping point. Like it's overlapping your work and your home area, your space. I mean, even as a teacher, I know that my classroom is set up for my students to succeed. I have my whiteboard, you know, we have our document cameras, we have everything that we might need. But when you're at home trying to give instruction, I guess the number one thing that I'm going to praise our teachers and our parents is the patience that they're having with our children.
Right, and then kind of piggybacking off of that, because you're just so on point with my transitions, right? is you know, in our household, being a parent of a child, albeit preschool, who's using technology, is not going so well. Other parents are facing various challenges. I mean, you're a relatively new parent. I mean, we just talked about Morris's birthday a little while ago. What is some positive feedback or positive vibes you can give to parents who are just dealing with something they're not used to dealing with?
So right now, the key thing is our children's social emotional well-being. Like they, and I'll transition with Morris actually, because I'm so afraid that Morris is going to forget his grandparents. I'm so afraid that Morris is going to forget his aunts and uncles. I'm afraid that he's not going to be able to socialize. And that is the number one thing that parents should be focusing on right now. Our children are missing their friends. They're missing recess. They're missing carpet time. They're missing seeing each other in the hallway, giving high fives to their teachers and hugs to their principals. All of these little things, our kids can catch up with Charlotte's Web or whatever book reading that they're reading in class, but they can't, that time that they're developing social skills, they're missing out on that. And that is the number one thing that if parents, that if our kids could communicate, you know, when they're lashing out, like, this is boring, this is terrible, this is da-da-da, I don't want to do this anymore, and they're in tears because the technology isn't working or whatever, like, we forget that privilege of going to school and being in front of someone that cares in a classroom with other children, that socializing is the key component that keeps our kids, I don't want to say motivated, but sets up that dynamic of success in a classroom when someone raises their hand and someone laughs at the teacher's joke and someone doesn't. And, you know, even the dialogue, when you have a healthy amount of discourse in a debate class or in an English class, our kids are missing that.
Yeah, no, it's truly is phenomenal what our kids are missing and how their behaviors are changing and how we're all kind of just trudging along. You know, one of the great things that I have seen happen, and unfortunately childhood hunger is definitely an issue in this community. Emanu involved with kids meals, which I just saw the kids meal stats today about how their impact is just growing phenomenally. But unfortunately, you know, a lot of these families, a lot of these kids get their meals through Houston ISD, the breakfast or lunch. And I'm seeing all these major distribution sites, again, going back to the logistics, but tell me about, you know, if you can, some of the things Houston ISD is doing to partner to make sure these kids are fed and their families are fed.
So they're partnering with the Houston Food Bank, and HISD is partnering with the Houston Food Bank. And if there is anybody out there that's watching that wants to contribute, you can send an email to me, to the interim superintendent, to the HISD Foundation, and I'll never turn down resources for our kids. But what is happening is schools are becoming the hubs for food distribution sites. We have Barnett Stadium that has now become a testing site. Also, the Del Mar Stadium off of 290, that's a testing site for COVID-19. We have, of course, federal money that's coming into the food banks that is enabling us to be able to give not just to students but to entire families. So that is some of the partnering that we have done, and we've seen a lot of families be okay and in this. I don't want to say be okay, that are receiving some of what they need. So.
Right. It gives the access that they need.
Right.
And HISD, whether it's the COVID sites or the food distribution sites, HISD is playing a role and being the hub, like you said.
Right. And also, Jason, if you would allow me the opportunity to challenge some of our viewers today. So I know that I had a teacher, and Facebook, social media has been a huge avenue for me to be able to help out. So a teacher, you know, said, oh, we have a family that needs X, Y, and Z. So then I posted in the Homebound for Cooking or whatever little group that I was in, and I'm like, hey, you know, we have 9 families that need food or da-da-da. And so people were able to give, so that way certain families that were either afraid and or couldn't. I have students that hop on a bus from one side of town, bringing their little sisters to try to come to a food bank on another side of town because their parents are working or whatever the situation is. So if you want to connect with your teacher, your children's teachers, and see if somebody else in her classroom might be in need, and that would be another avenue to be able to help. So again, I connected with the teacher, asked her what her needs were, what her students' needs were, and we all came together to be able to help that teacher and her students. But that was another way of helping personally for me. You know, HISD has asked for volunteers. The Houston Food Bank has a great setup where they have access to gloves and masks and hand washing stations. So if y'all want to volunteer there, that's awesome too.
That's great. That's great. Now let's look ahead beyond the pandemic, if we will. I know it's hard to, in some respects, in other respects, it's, you know, I want to get to that light at the end of the tunnel. So with that being said, everything is fluid. We know that everything changes on a dime. Things are moving slowly, then they've stopped and they move again. What are some of the challenges that you as a HISD administration, as a board member, see in reopening our schools?
Again, the uncertainty, everything is changing day to day. We have people from the top up dictating policies that have maybe never taught, and to be able to have a socially distanced learning experience, if we were to send kids back to school right now, it's almost a guaranteed impossibility to keep our kids apart. So what I hear with the CDC recommendations, I'm just, again, as a teacher, I don't know if they've ever been in a classroom when I've had students. I mean, I always speak about to my experiences. Like one year I had 59 students in one classroom and they had to shift them around. Then I had 36, then 35. in an, like kids sitting on a desk, one on the flat top, one on the seat. Like, I don't know if people that are
making the decisions are reasonably, like, we can't have 15 kids in all these schools in the class, each individual classroom, because we need to be at 20, 25, 30, whatever it may be, because of the space, because of the personnel. It's a challenge to think ahead, I guess.
Right, and I know that I was part of a pilot program back in 1987 with Peter Janoski Elementary School, where we had a year-round program, and so it was like cluster A, cluster B, cluster C, and so we went at different times of the year, but that is also an inconvenience and a burden on parents, because if you have a student, you know, that's in cluster A, you have a cousin that you look after that's in cluster C that goes in. I mean, there are ways that we can get creative, but that creativity is going to cost money. And that's money that, looking forward, I mean, we're going to be in an $18 million deficit come next year. And so with HB3, House Bill 3, there, that funding source is up in the air as well after the next biennium. So I am very, 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 what's the word?
Skeptical.
Skeptical, but also, I mean, that uncertainty is, you know, I mean, the one thing that our kids need, as a classroom teacher, I know consistency is key, and not being able to afford that consistency is the scariest part moving forward. So to answer your question, that I believe HISD should have a plan that prepares for every scenario, where whether if we go back in August, this is what A, B, C, and D would look like. If we don't go back, this is what A, B, C, and D would look like. This is like, these are our kids that with ID numbers that normally get free lunch. This is a satellite service that we could have for, you know, X, Y, like, I mean, as a, you know, you're a logistics person, you know, working through the big picture item, saying, okay, this is our end goal. How do we get there? And let's see if we can figure out the hiccups between now and then. So that way, the day of, you know, we can dispatch this person to go out and fix this issue. That is I think my biggest fear is the uncertainty. And that's the scariest part. So
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. Earlier in our conversation, we were talking about the role of the teacher changing to a digital platform and how they had to kick that up. When school goes back, the role of the teacher is going to change because there is a significant gap in being together. What do you think are going to be the biggest challenges? What are the new hats, if you will? You and I were talking about hats earlier. What are the new hats that teachers are going to have to put on once they get back into whatever this new normal is?
Oh, honestly, it's going to be trauma training, not just for our kids, but for also our teachers. I know that I have teachers that have now taken on where their parents have lost their jobs, and they're taking on the responsibility of another family, or, you know, our kids that, you know, that I know this is such a really hard conversation to have, but the domestic abuse that our kids could be suffering around, that some kids are suffering, the hunger that they're suffering. I mean, all of this is traumatic. We will be dealing with post-traumatic stress distress. That is a guarantee. Our kids right now, HISD is so large. We have over 210,000 students. And again, after 10 years of teaching in HISD, I have many stories that, you know, I told this story the other day in an interview, that if I don't know what you need, Jason, then I don't know how to fix it. And I remember getting after a student, you know, we'll call her Becky. Becky, why don't you have your essay? She's like, Ms. Santos, I didn't have electricity. I couldn't, you know, I left here at 8 o'clock at night and didn't get home. And I didn't have the electricity to be able to see what I was writing. And so, I mean, and we have 54,000 high school students with laptops, but how many families don't have electricity at home, don't have internet at home? How many people have to focus on just keeping our kids fed, you know, their families fed, that school is not necessarily a priority right now. And that is something that, because I was a classroom teacher, I can see those challenges coming, you know, moving forward. Right. And those are some things that I hope that HISD, we can look at, you know, the social emotional learning of social emotional well-being of our students and our teachers, because teachers will be wearing those hats.
And, you know, I want to end on a very positive note. You are someone that really enjoys being amongst the students. I've seen you post videos with cheerleaders and bands and have musical performances and musical theater. What do you, specifically you, look most forward to when we get back to business and being able to see your students, which are all 21, you know, 210,000 students in Houston ISD?
I will tell you a little secret. When my powers are low, or when my spirits are low, or when I feel like I just can't, I gave up my career, my love, my life, my passion to get on this school board, which is an unpaid position. And yes, both my sets of parents are like, why did you do that? Like, the reason is because our kids, our students, every single last one of our students needs a voice, and being able to hear our students, Jason, is the most valuable asset that a school board member can have. And so when I'm out there cheering our kids on, they just to have someone there in their corner, I mean, that's what our kids need. And I miss that. And just being in our kids' literal corner, like coming into a classroom and giving a speech, or just giving a high five. I'm such a high fiver, and hugs. I miss hugs. So I do want to end on a positive note and say those things. And to our parents out there, please, 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 fine arts is super important for our kids' learning. Please, please, please stay tuned to the HISD school board and what we're doing, and the focus that we're having, and making sure that we are holding your elected leadership, which is me, accountable for the well-being of 210,000 students and over 28,000 employees. And we have to respect every taxpayer dollar and ensure that they're going straight to our kids. And Jason, I miss those high fives and those hugs. And when I see Isaac, I sure will give him a high five and a hug, and hopefully get to take some of it, at least as a holla one day.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for being in the corner of our kids. I know the role you play, you wear it on your shoulders all the time. It's very special to you. It's special to your family. Ryan, of course, someone who's been in the schools with you. And again, very appreciative. And to all of you watching, thank you for tuning in. I hope you learned from Elizabeth today, as you have from our previous guests. And of course, we'll be back here 12 p.m. on Wednesdays on the Congregation Emanu Facebook page and Polar Chapel page of our website. Thank you to David Tanner for his role behind the scenes. Sammy the cat was, of course, involved, as she usually is. And of course, it was great to see Morris. Maybe I'll get Isaac on a future episode. But thank you again, Elizabeth. Thanks to David behind the scenes. And we will see everybody next Wednesday at noon. And you'll have to wait and find out who our guest is next week. Take care, everybody.
Bye.